All right, since we still have a few people trickling in, we're going to hold off for just a couple of more minutes and allow all the people to get their emails for the Zoom info, and then we will have some very special guests and some great conversation. Again, thanks for tuning in. All right, fans of the Tampa Bay Rowdies, thank you for joining us here at Al Lang. I can tell you, I miss saying that every Saturday. So excited that they asked me to be the host on this call tonight with such great, not just fans, but also staff helping out. My name is Ryan Sudol. I've been your stadium announcer since the 2012 season. Just an absolutely great night ahead of us with our very own Jake Nutting from the Unused Substitutes podcast. He'll be your main commentator, along with another very special guest who we'll get to in just a second. First off, we do want to address the questions that obviously are on everybody's mind, and especially a bunch that we got in the survey. Nobody wants Rowdy soccer back more than all of us to return in 2020. Right now, the focus, though, is continuing on working with the USL as well as government officials on when it makes sense to return to the field when it's safe for everybody involved. We understand you're just excited as we are about everything that we built for 2020, especially starting out the season with a win. But we do have to follow the guidance of the league. We're working as quickly as possible to make sure that we are giving fans updated information as we get it. I'm sure some of the questions will be addressed throughout the night, but for the most part, this is going to be X's, O's, and history with one of the absolutely most exciting Rowdies players we've had, and now our main man and head coach, Neill Collins. But before I turn it over to Jake to start out with the hard questions, I did see this question come in, and I have to ask, because I know he's one of my favorites, but Kevin Vicario, also a member of our United States Armed Forces, said, "We're proud to have you as a coach, Neill, but who is your favorite Rowdies fan?" Neill, I don't know. This seems like it might be a difficult one for you to attack.
Oh, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's great to get an opportunity to speak to some of you and hopefully answer some of your questions. That first question, certainly difficult. It's like asking me what one of my kids is my favourite. You know, I think been very fortunate in my time in Tampa Bay to meet so many great people behind the scenes at the club. I mean, the staff is some of the great staff I've worked for in my career. And I've been very fortunate to work at some great clubs. And then the people in the stands are the same. And I remember growing up, the team I supported, Kilmarnock, who were my boyhood team that I followed home and away, we signed a player who had been at Celtic, one of the biggest clubs in Scotland, all his career. But when he came, he really got the fans behind him because again, what he said was every club has great fans, and great people following. We're very fortunate to have so many. So in terms of singling anyone out, I'm not going to do that, but we appreciate you all, and hopefully we can give you some value tonight.
And now we'll welcome in Jake Nutting from the Unused Substitutes podcast. Jake, thanks for hopping in and helping kind of guide this along. And for those of you that have popped in the last few minutes, we do have a chat section that we'll be checking out, as well as the questions you asked from the survey that we'll be addressing, and also the Q&A button here on the Zoom call. So Jake, go ahead, take it away, start us off.
Thanks, Ryan, and thank you, Neill, for obviously joining us, and thank you for everyone who's joining along with us tonight. I heard that Andre Serengo signed up at the last minute there, so great to have the Wrangler with us tonight. And yeah, Neill, so I want to start by looking back a little bit first. So you were born a little bit past the heyday of the Rowdies, but did you have a sense of the Rowdies and the history of the Rowdies, and what was your sense of the team coming up in England, do you think?
I've been a big football fan from a young age, and obviously growing up in Scotland, supported my Scottish, Scotland, my local team that I just mentioned. But then, like any young lad that's interested in football, you start looking far and wide. I was very fortunate to get to, while I was on vacation, to be here during the USA '94 World Cup. And while I was out here, I always wanted to see what teams there were. And it became quite clear, looking into the history, that the Rowdies were, one of the most historic teams, if not the most. Obviously, some British players, some famous British players that came and played here in the past. And then during my times on vacation, I always kind of kept an eye out to see kind of what was happening. And I just noticed through 2010, as things started to grow and some players that I'd previously played with started to join the team, Carol Court being one of them, that things were starting to grow, and eventually, kind of made my way down to the stadium as a fan. But I was always very well aware of the strong kind of Rowdies brand and the history behind that.
Right. And what do you recall about the process to sign with the team? How long did it take? And I know I was talking with Perry Vanderbeek recently, and he said that he recalls you coming to meet them at the hotel to finalize that contract while the team was training in the UK.
Yeah, it was quite a stressful time, if I remember correctly. I'd played pretty much every game for Sheffield United, and what was a very up and down season. I was 32, I was coming to the end of my contract, and I'd always envisioned at some point getting the opportunity to come and play in America. And having been to watch the Rowdies and been, in the state of Florida a lot on vacation, I kind of reached out. I reached out to the head coach at the time and explained that I would be out of contract, in June, and would love the opportunity to speak about coming to play. And he said, well, we need you earlier than that, which was in March, I think. So then the talks went into overdrive pretty quickly. My wife was pregnant with twins at the time. But again, really supportive about the opportunity. Thankfully, the club were really supportive as well, because, again, they can see it's life-changing. It's not just a career move, it's a life move when you move your family, with young family, that far. And again, very lucky that Perry and Stuart helped get the deal done. And again, I remember going to meet Perry and sign the contract and then go to do the medical, which is commonplace when you're obviously signing. I've done many through my career, some more extensive than others, but none more extensive than the one that the Rowdies had set up with Notts County. They were staying in Nottingham, and it took around 3 to 4 hours long. They made me do literally every little thing possible: press-ups, pull-ups, sprints, beep test. Me and Andrew Keane, the athletic trainer, laugh about it now. He actually sent me some videos from the day itself, and I'm known for having a quick temper, but I managed to keep my temper in check that day. I was so keen to get the move done that I would have put up with anything.
That's funny. So why were you interested in coming over to the U.S. then? You said you'd always envisioned it someday. Why was that a goal for you?
Again, I think I've been very fortunate to my family, you know, take me on vacation, travel, being around the States. And again, I think it's a great place to live, a great place to bring up a young family. I think the sport here is fantastic. And I just felt that soccer was only going to go one way in this country, and that was up. And I'm a great believer that if you miss the opportunity, especially if you leave it too late, you know, things move on. So again, just keen to broaden my horizons as well. Very fortunate to play in England for so long and Scotland prior to that. But I think again, it's important, you know, new experience, different culture, different style of soccer. So yeah, the whole thing. But the biggest thing for me again was the club. You know, having had first-hand experience of being at a game, you could see the stadium was excellent, well looked after. The team seemed to be ran in a professional manner. So that was a big draw. I wouldn't have just went anywhere in the States. This was a big draw to come here, and it's proven correct.
Now, Neill, you made the transition almost 2 years ago to the day into being a manager, but what do you miss most about playing for the Rowdies?
That's an easy question to answer. I've said it a couple of times already. One of the biggest attractions to me at the time was like the kind of location of the stadium, you know, along with the history of the club. I loved the field. I've told Jeff Parkinson, our groundskeeper, that on many occasions. Had we played on turf, I don't know if I'd have been sitting in this seat right now, you know, in my house in Florida. It was big to me to come and play in such a beautiful field, and then having seen the atmosphere at the stadium as well. So the biggest thing I miss is playing at Al Lang on a Saturday night. When I'm there as a coach and the field's set up and it's a couple hours before kickoff, and that's when I wouldn't say miss playing, but I'm a bit envious of the players that are going to get to go out and play in front of our fans, and you know, so that was definitely the best part about it.
Neill, so take us back to the moments that you sit down for that conversation with Bill Edwards and he offers you that job. I know me and some other fans were doing some online detective work trying to figure out who would take over. We're figuring out which player has their coaching badges and all that stuff. That ends up being you. Did you have any idea it was coming when you sat down for that meeting? And can you give us insight into that conversation you had?
I mean, again, that was, as much as it might have been a surprise for you guys, it was equally a surprise for me. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that the team was going through a bad spell at that point in time. So I think as a player, you're always wary that change could be afoot when the team's not performing. But after a disappointing result in Jacksonville, which I think we had 6 or 8 games in a row, road games in a row without scoring a goal, things were pretty bleak. And the people that were struggling the most behind the scenes were the young players. The more experienced players had been over the course and had seen poor runs of form, had seen crisis in confidence, had seen coaches change. But they were definitely looking for a way forward. And I think Joe Cole and Lee Cohen played a big part in terms of, I know Joe was a big supporter, and I think Bill asked his opinion first. So that, I'm always thankful to Joe for that. We built a great relationship. Me and Joe, in his time here as a player, we spoke football. Joe's a football fanatic, so we would spend all these plane journeys, bus journeys, talking tactics and talking football. So he put a good word in for me. I think Lee could see the amount of effort I was putting in behind the scenes and coaching in the local community. Now, does that make you ready to take on your first professional job? I mean, again, that was Bill's decision, but the conversation for me with Bill, again, was that Bill was someone that did so many great things for the Rowdies, put his money where his mouth was, set up the stadium, the facilities behind the scenes. But in some respects, I think it had been left shortchanged. And I was keen to emphasise where I would maybe make changes, having been behind the scenes. And by the end of the meeting, which was very obviously positive, he offered me the job permanently, which I thought would maybe start on a short-term basis. But again, I felt it was a long-term plan that was needed, and yeah, it was, you know, it was a really proud moment to get that opportunity. Again, really grateful to Bill for giving that, you know, a young coach like me an opportunity. And a lot of people ask about, was it a hard decision to give up playing? You know, literally 24 hours after being captain in the team, but it honestly was quite an easy decision because the opportunity I felt was so great, and I felt I could impact the club more now on this side of things than I could on the field. So I don't look back with any regrets.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was Bill Edwards like to work with and interact with when you became coach? I know a lot of people who works the Rowdies, they usually have a story about Bill Edwards. He's a bit of a character, a bit of eccentric, but like you said, he's done a great credit to the Rowdies of years of investment. So what was it like for you to interact with him on a more permanent basis as coach?
Yeah,
Intimate, I should say.
I mean, again, I think I enjoy a very good relationship with Bill. As I said, I think I look back to the first coach that gave me my debut, and I always have a real soft spot for him because he was the first guy to give me an opportunity as a player, which was a great moment. And as a coach, you know, I felt with Bill, again, had he made mistakes? Of course. Many people do in sport. He's not the first billionaire to put money into a sports team and not get things right. But his heart was in the right place, and I felt with Bill and myself were both pretty straight talking, and I started out the way I meant to go on in terms of, you know, I'm in charge of the technical side, and while Bill's the owner, and of course I wouldn't expect him anything other than to have an input and an opinion. You know, I'll make the decision that I think is best, and we were always again good conversations. And I mean, if you ask about a Bill story, there was one night I was sitting in the watching, I think it was the World Cup, might have been on, am I right, 2018, or maybe the championships, I can't remember. And the phone goes and it's Bill, but he wasn't phoning me. It was FaceTime, but he didn't realise he was FaceTiming me. And we ended up, you know, having a call discussing the World Cup and the matches that were on for 30 minutes. And again, you know, it was just funny. I came off and spoke to Lee. He said, "Yeah, I've just had a FaceTime call with Bill for 30 minutes discussing the intricacies of the World Cup." So that was good. I enjoyed a great relationship with Bill.
Now, when Bill first brought you over to the States, this is addressing one of our viewer questions. Our friend Brett from the Las Vegas Lights, thanks for tuning in, wanted to know what the difference is between the USL level of play compared to the leagues that you played in England and Scotland, and kind of maybe what was one of the biggest changes adjusting to the US game as opposed to the English game or the Scottish game?
Yeah, great question, Brett. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think question again that I get asked more so by fellow professionals. You know, I think intrigued by the difference. I would say the biggest thing for me is the kind of cultural, environmental differences. You know, playing in Florida in July in that heat means it's a different game. If you don't have guys that are fit and energetic and able to run around, you know, you're going to struggle. And you know, so there's no question that you need to have players that are very physically robust. So that's something particular to our team. So again, for me, with the Rowdies, how would the Rowdies fare, for instance, in Scotland and England? In January, on a cold Tuesday night at a Scunthorpe or a Stoke, it would be difficult because the game's played at 100 mile an hour in different weather conditions, and because of that, there's much more duels, aerial duels, much more kind of set pieces. I would say at times here because the game's a bit slower because of the weather, and I think those teams would equally struggle in the height of summer. There has been players that have come over from the UK and done exceptionally well, and there's players that have come over and struggled. And I think we'd have players in our league that would do the same, individuals that would do very well, and individuals that would also struggle because their talents and abilities. So for me, it's very much unique. You know, just while Scotland and England have got unique styles, so does the States, and that doesn't mean lesser. And I can tell from a player that just played, you know, 36 games in League One and came straight on the plane to play over here. If you weren't fit and you weren't focused and you weren't doing things right, you get found out. And I think that's what it's like at any professional level. You've got to be at it. And I think if you ask Marcel Schaefer, who again signed from Wolfsburg, he would probably tell you his first couple of months he wasn't quite at the level he would expect, and then quite quickly realised that, and then went to the level that you would expect from a German international, and was fantastic. But only when he was fully focused and training 100% and focused 100%. So I hope that gives you some kind of insight. But it's a tough question to answer.
Neill, so kind of related to the topic that we were just talking about with Bill Edwards, at the end of your first year in charge, the team gets sold to the Tampa Bay Rays. That's obviously a huge change for you. You said you had the great working relationship with Bill Edwards. It's a huge change for a new coach to take on, and it's a big change. When did you kind of find out that was part of the picture and a possibility the team might be sold, and how did you deal with that whole scenario?
I think when I took the job, I knew that there was a chance that Bill was potentially going to sell the club, and when I heard that it was going to go through and it was going to be the Rays, I mean, again, any coach, no matter how long you've been in the game or how young you are, you feel that the new owners might want to go in a certain direction. So you're certainly sceptical about your own position. But again, just very fortunate that to move from one owner that gave me an opportunity to the next set of owners, and that have taken taken things to another level, probably exactly what the club needed at that moment in time, and just gave me the opportunity to hopefully show my worth. I think that's all any coach asks is at least to be able to work for them and show what your plans are, and we've enjoyed a great working relationship together that I hope can go from strength to strength. And the culture that they've got there behind the scenes, which we were able to see firsthand when they first took over, was excellent. And throughout the whole last 2 or 3 months, they've been great. So again, fans have always got questions because their best interest is always the club. They always want what's best for their team, and I think Tampa Bay Rays are no different. They want what's best for the team as well, and I think it will be a long and very fruitful partnership together. And I couldn't have been luckier, to be quite honest.
And speaking of partnerships, Neill, another partnership the Rowdies have made recently overseas, which I actually got a chance to experience in August, was the relationship with Norwich City and Carroll Road, and just not just the colors, but also the culture surrounding the club, as far as just how the whole town really rallies around the Canaries. But besides what we saw from Caleb Richards and Jordan Doherty last year, what are the benefits that you've seen with partnering up with a Premier League team?
I mean, this has been another huge step for me, for the club, and an area that we kind of discussed with Bill. When I first talked about the job, I felt that as a club we undersold ourselves. I think as a whole, I think we've got such a great club and package to offer, players across the world, that we weren't tapping into that. And again, it's just strange how these things come up. But the visit Tampa connection that Norwich had, and then coming to our stadium, and anyone that comes and sees our club firsthand, they don't have anything but good and positive things to say. And then my personal relationship with the coaches there. So from that point of view, it the whole thing came together. From a technical point of view, it makes complete sense because it's a real partnership. It's not a partnership for corporate and on paper, where it's great to just say that you've got a partnership to tick a box. We've had real, the real fruits of that with Caleb last year. We've got Louis Lomas on loan this year, and it's a great open dialogue between the clubs about us getting players that are ready for our team, but also them giving us players that they know we can develop for them. And that's the way the partnership should work. A lot of these partnerships across the USL, I can tell you, are on paper. They don't get players that are able to impact the first team the way Caleb has. They send guys that are either too young to play, or they don't send players at all. So again, things that we do have to have substance, and this one definitely does. And I hope we can go from strength to strength. And I should say that, one thing the UK has done great over the last few years is their academy system is fantastic. Jordan's another player that we took from Sheffield United, but it's an area that we're really trying to expand on and go into Europe and just get the best players possible. We're trying to find the best players possible for our team to make us as successful as possible. And wherever they may be from, we're just trying to find them. So I'm constantly trying to develop those relationships. And again, it's got to be all within the reason of making us better.
Neill, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes in that first time that you have to address the players and the staff as the new coach. It has to be, a little surreal, maybe even a little bit awkward to start out. What was that moment like, and what were you just trying to stress to them in that first those first comments that you made to them?
So it was. Honestly, me and my wife talk about that time. It was very surreal, but again, it's a kind of fight or flight moment, and I felt ready for it. I was really wanting to embrace it. So I remember getting introduced to the players as the head coach, and again I said to them what I just said to you guys. I took the job because I wanted to help them. I'd seen how much it hurt some of our players about how kind of poor we'd been as a team, and I wanted to try and change that. And then we didn't have much time. It was a Thursday evening. We had the game on the Saturday evening, and I just said, look, on Saturday we're going to try and put some pride back in the jersey. I want us to get out and get a fast start. And then, we focused very much on Saturday. We went very short term early on. Then I had to go into a room with a group of staff that previously obviously been my coaches and address them. But again, everyone was great, really good, because it's difficult for them as well. And that's the thing. They're in where they're probably wondering where this is going to leave them. But I'd seen that we had good people behind the scenes. People like Lee and Nico Castillo were able to tell me, look, give these guys a shot. Let's see how it goes. And that's sometimes the best thing you can do, I think, is give the people in charge a chance to shine, just like I wanted when new owners took over, and they didn't let me down. They helped a lot. Friday was a great, great training session. Again, I didn't have anything to compare it to, but I just felt the players were ready for change. So every one of them were ready for something new. It was tough having to leave guys out. Guys that I just roomed with that probably thought, right, Neill will give me my chance. And I wasn't going to give them a chance. And someone like Leo Fernandez, I remember leaving out, and him then coming up to me on the Saturday saying, I can play this position, I can play that position, and having to tell him, don't worry, it's one team, I've had to pick one team, and you're going to be important. So that was not difficult. I was ready for that part of the job, but again, you do feel for these guys because you've been there. And then no sleep for those 2 nights, and then the game itself, we'd prepared. It was great. We went 1-0 up after 3 minutes on a set piece we'd worked on. We got a fast start, and then it was as if it was just warning me what the next 2 months were going to be like. We made catastrophe of a goal. We were 2-1 down. Thankfully, we got it back to 2-2, and we should have won the game. The goalkeeper made a wonderful save. But one of the biggest things that stays with me again during that time was the support of the players and the staff, but also the fans, guys like yourself and Ryan and many other people, whether it be on social media. Some people might have wanted a more experienced coach. They might have wanted a bigger name coach. They might have wanted me on the field. They might have wanted me off the field, but not in the dugout. But the support was fantastic, and that was one of my proudest moments, walking out as the head coach, and then the backing that the fans gave me that night and have done since has been great.
Now, I think you're a guy who's always has the eye on coaching down in the future when you were playing still. So were you a guy who was always thinking in the back of his head what you would do, and if you were in the coaches and the managers' his shoes, I mean?
Yeah, always. Always. And I would go back now, and I'd probably say in hindsight, you obviously look at it now slightly different. At times I was wrong as a player. There was obviously at times I think I was still right, but you do realise once you walk in their shoes how there's always a bigger picture and how there's always not just 23, 24, 25 players to think of, there's staff to think of, and your decisions are affecting all these people. But I've always felt as a kind of almost a coach that played. I felt even at 17, 18, 19, if I didn't make it into full time, I would be a coach, and it's everything I thought it would be. And I'm just hoping that I can make it a long career.
We did get along the coaching and pretending to be manager early on as a player. Jeff Herndon, also a big fan, wants to know if you could. Obviously, we don't want you to go anywhere, Neill, but you do have a UEFA A license. So if you did have a dream coaching job anywhere, what would be that team that you wanted to coach?
That's a good question. Like any of my ex-teams, we in England are huge clubs that I've obviously got a bond with. But I would say that kind of big soft spot for Sunderland. And I think, I'm sure there's many people on here that have watched the Netflix documentary, Sunderland Till I Die, and their fans, similar to ours, very passionate. Their football club is their life, and you see the mess that they're in. So to get that club up and running again would be a huge challenge for someone, and I was very fortunate to be there on the way up at one point, and when things are going well, it's a phenomenal club. But again, I've got a lot to prove and a lot to learn between now and then. But I was ambitious as a player. I'm ambitious as a coach. But again, a huge job in my hands to get the Rowdies success first.
Here's a hard question for you, Neill. How did you decide on your look for the sidelines, your fashion for the sidelines? It's a big question for a lot of coaches, and you're making a big statement coming out there. How'd you settle on your look?
I could put it all on my wife, shouldn't I? And say that she picks my wardrobe. It's again, we're actually dictated to quite a lot by what the USL. I think a coach should be allowed to wear what they want within reason. But honestly, that's what I feel smart in. I feel that's my kind of going to work outfit. So there's not loads of thought behind it. I feel smart. Hopefully I represent the club well. And yeah, that's kind of what gets me into feeling like it's a game and ready to go. So if anyone's got any tips, I'm all ears.
So that first time you have to stand there on the sidelines, it's got to be a totally different experience, especially for a guy like you who's so active on the field, both with your feet and with your mouth, as we all know. It has to be a totally different experience. How did you deal with the nerves that first night?
Wow. Again, that's the thing as a coach. You could probably be nervous and try and hide it. Maybe more than you can as a player. Again, like I've been around football all my life. So being on the touchline was a different experience, but I'm comfortable in that environment. I would say though the range of emotions quite quickly hit home. Being 1-0 up, thinking great, this is easy. A little bit of work on the Friday and we score and get off to a good start, and then quite quickly you're down 2-1 and could be 3-1, and you're trying to. That's where you feel out of control, because again, I'd coached for one day, but you want to impact it, like you said. I'd been used to being able to, constantly direct on the field, even get after the referee, whereas now you're the coach. So that's something that's taking getting used to, and I, as you said, sometimes I do better at it than others, and that's something that I'm trying to constantly get better at. How can I affect the game without hurting our own team? Because again, as a player, you look to your coach, and sometimes it's good to see him animated. Sometimes you want to see him calm. Sometimes you want to see him happy or angry or whatever it might be. But you certainly don't want to look over and always feel nervous by what he's doing. So I'm wary of that and constantly trying to get better at these things.
If you could give a piece of advice to the Neill who coached that first game that night today, what would it be? And how far do you think you've grown as a coach since then?
Well, that's a really good question. What advice? I would warn him about the stuff that was going to happen over the next 2 months. I'd tell him half the team was going to retire. And, no, that's a good question. I look back, and again, Jay, I always look back, whether it be your career, playing career, coaching career, I think you need to go through these experiences to learn from them. You have to make the mistakes. Again, I would probably, just say, don't be too reactive. And I don't think I was overreactive. I think in certain situations I was pleased with how I handled myself, but I was so keen to improve things. And I'll be honest again, I was probably, I probably thought the squad was slightly better than it actually was. I knew the squad had its shortcomings as a player. I could tell them from playing in the team, but I felt that, we could still make a real push for it. But then when you took myself out of the team, and I honestly didn't think taking me out of the team would be a big thing. I really didn't. But then to lose Zach Bertius, to lose David Najum, to lose Marcel Schaefer, all those to injuries, even Kyle Karenga, who didn't play a lot, but to lose him to injury, that squad just wasn't good enough. And I think at the time I should just have maybe been a little bit more patient and almost knowing that. And I don't mean being accepting, because I wouldn't have been accepting, but I think I was maybe pushing for something at times that wasn't maybe there. So I think going through that pain that we did, while there was some bright spots, there was a lot of pain for a lot of fans. I really believe it helped us push things on. And I think if we'd made the playoffs with that late run, which we could have easily done, despite the last 3 games being disappointing results, could quite easily have been different. That would have papered over the cracks and potentially made us suffer longer next season, because some players we might have thought we'll go by with, and that wouldn't have been the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So whose bit of news gave you earned the biggest spit take, Marcel or Tam McKenna telling you they were going to retire?
I mean, honestly, Marcel. I mean, when you lose Marcel Schaefer out your midfield, that's a good number of assists and a lot of goals. But look, Marcel was not in too different situation to me, and anyone at the club will tell you, Marcel was so split, and again, he was going off to take a job that was phenomenal opportunity, but he genuinely considered not, and his feeling towards the club is huge. So absolute 100% behind Marcel in his decision. And it helped us in some respects, not short term, but in the long term, we probably had to move away from that model of the older players, as enjoyable as it was, I know, for fans. But I think they'll agree that people like Wan Tejada, younger players like Caleb Richards, who haven't made their name, can equally be as exciting, while they might not have the history behind them. And then Tam, again, great servant, really, really well-respected player. I was keen for Tam to get his 100th appearance. I said to him that, I thought he should have played more, because I always felt the team did well when Tam played in it. So, yeah, that was definitely a bullet between the eyes on both occasions.
Was there any player in the Eastern Conference, Neill, when you were playing that you just couldn't really get by, or couldn't have a good moment with, that you'd have some battles with? Any of those Red Bull 2 teams? Or
I mean, again, I will say Junior Flemings is an excellent player that I thought when we signed him was a great signing, with his physical attributes. And that goes back to Brett's question about the leagues. I mean, Junior's got physical attributes that very few players have around the world. So Junior was definitely one. And Andrew Tenari, another one that we managed to bring to the club, that I thought was a good player for a good team. But No, again, honestly, I could go through a lot of players. Luke Spencer at Louisville, really, really tough, tough striker that served them well. There's a lot of good players that I respect, and again, it says if you're not in your game, they'll cause you problems. So yeah, quite a few players that cause me sleepless nights.
So everyone at the Rowdies commends you on your work ethic, and obviously there's a much heavier workload that comes with stepping into the manager's role. Have you found a way to maybe recharge your batteries and try to avoid burning out? What's your go-to? I know you're an avid golfer. You and Ryan were talking about golf before we came on live.
I mean, honestly, Jay, is something I do struggle with. I've got 4 children and an amazing wife, so I obviously want to give them time, but I'm really, really impatient to just get better as a coach myself. You realise that while you might have a good knowledge on certain things, as a coach, even more so than a player, you're always trying to get better. You're always trying to stay ahead of the game. But then even more than that, I just want to bring success to this team. For many people, for the fans, of course, for the people behind the scenes that have been here a long time. So I'm impatient for that. I feel the first few months in the job were tough, and I learned a lot. I feel last year we showed glimpses for the first 2/3. A lot of people say half a season. I say no, for 2/3 of the season, I felt we were the best team. The last third, I learned a lot that I want to put right. I feel as if we did that in the off season. I'm really pleased with the group that we've got together. Really, really pleased. We can go into that about how they've dealt with this, but I mean, I'm proud of them, and I'm really keen to see them in the heat of battle. I'm sure you fans are keen to see them. So I try not to burn myself out, but sometimes don't succeed at that because my mind is constantly going, oh, and should we be doing more? What else can we do? So I just want us to be better. I just want, and I was like that, especially in the early stages of my career, when I wanted to get from part-time football to full-time football. I wanted to play more. So, but I think that's what you should be like. That's what it should be like, and that's the players that we've got now. That's what we want at the club. That's why someone like Chad Bart, Andres is on here. Andres is going to be coach of our League One team. We've got players like Wantahada, Jordan Doherty, Caleb Richards last year, Evan Laurel, guys, and I can name loads. They want to be at the Rowdies, but they want to be higher as well, and that's the way it should be. We should all be ambitious and have desire to be successful. Because if you're successful, then you can go on. So, I mean, I have taken up fishing as well, so I'm trying to get some relaxation doing that. But it's making me more stressful because I'm terrible at
it. Yeah, Neill, how are the players holding up during this time now? How are you keeping the morale up and keeping them motivated during this time when there's no games to be played?
I mean, honestly, I always try and keep the morale up by giving them the usual humour. That probably takes the morale down. No, I think for us all, this situation's been strange. There's no getting away from that. Has this situation affected everyone? Yes, it's affected some people a lot more than us. We've got to keep it in perspective. But, so I'm well aware of that. There's people out there that are obviously dying. There's people out there that are ill. There's people out there that lost their jobs. So in the big picture, we're fine. But I do feel for these guys. They got themselves into supreme fitness. We played a really tough pre-season. We went to New York. I mean, one of the toughest games in the schedule away. We won. And I thought relatively convincingly. I was really pleased with the performance. First time in 10 years we'd won in New York. Ready to go down to Miami, another tough test. And then that's cut short. So in the first week or two, you're not sure how long it's going to be. So the lads are all trying to keep their fitness at the level they've been at. We quite quickly realised that this could be longer haul. So what we, very much so, I trust the players. We give them their workout programs. We've not been doing Zoom workouts because I just feel that, again, someone like Jan Ekra might be teaching his kids in the morning, because his wife might work. So if I'm telling him to be on a 10 a.m. Zoom call to do a yoga session, I'm sure he'll do it, but is that to the detriment of his daughter's learning? So we let the players trust them to do their workouts, and having worked with them, I've got no problem with that. But what we did try and do was interact with them. All the staff are in constant contact with them to just, we're here for them. We gave them equipment. So we make sure we gave them everything we could to allow them to work out. I did a lot of individual work on Zoom with them to discuss areas they can get better, video. Again, just everyone's interested in their own game. So I'm interested in making them better because it'll help the team. We've focused largely on the mental aspect, because they're all the same. They're all going through the what ifs. What if we only play half a season? What if we play a full season? How's it going to impact me? We just want them to be in the best mental space, and they are. We had a sports psychologist speak to them as a group, and you hear the guys talk. We talk to them, we give them tasks to come back to us on, and we've been back out now on the field training in small groups, and I've never seen them happier than last week. Being amongst each other, always 6 feet apart, all right, but just being out there, touching a ball, having the coaches direct them, it was great. So keeping their morales up has been easy because they've made it easy. No one's complained, no issues. So again, great to get back out. We'll be on the field tomorrow in different groups working, and these guys, as I say, who knows what the format's going to be, but we're just trying to keep them as ready as we possibly can. And from a mental aspect, these guys they're ready, and that was one of the biggest things we wanted to improve from last year. Was just add 2 or 3 guys that we felt could, when the tough got going, they were ready to stand up. And I feel people like Jordan Scarlett, Forrest Lasso, Lewis Hilton, these are the guys that turn up, not just for the games, every day in training, and they set the example, like the example that Seba Gonzati sets every day. Hardest trainer, runs the most, scores the most goals, does everything we ask, and that's setting the standards, and we needed more people like that, and I think we've got that.
It is obviously something that none of us have ever dealt with before, Neill, but as far as, going from a daily training schedule, 4 or 5 days a week, how has the contact between not just you and the players been, but between the players themselves?
The players all live together in TG in a place just not far from St. Pete's, TGM apartments, and they again, they've got a great bond together. When you get on a Zoom call, it's great because again, what happens is they see each other's face, all the jokes start, all the jokes start coming out, and straight away they realise how much they miss it and how much they miss each other. But we're really fortunate that we've got a lot of players with a lot in common. So the interaction is good. We had a quiz night one night, which was great, competitive. So we've tried our best to try and keep that chemistry alive, but nothing makes up for being together, going on the road and winning a game and celebrating in the locker room afterwards. And I'm sure some people have watched the Last Dance documentary as well, and I tell you what, you can see that you don't need to be best friends either on a team. And my assistant that we just brought to the club, Kevin Foley, played together in a successful team, and we were all very good friends off the field, but on it we would rip each other's heads off to win. And again, I think that's something that's good to remember, and that we want competitors. We don't all go out and sing Kumbaya when we play together, but as long as there's a healthy respect, and this group's definitely got that. So it's good to get them back out in the field and keep building that camaraderie.
Following up on that Last Dance remark, if you could get a documentary about any soccer player or team, their season, what would it be? Who would it be?
I think again, I thought the Sunderland one was fantastic because it was so raw and so, it's so true. It just gave a real behind the scenes insight. I do think if I could go back in time and, behind the scenes when Bill, probably during Bill's tenure in the NASL days, I think that would be great to show the fans. I think now it's great where the game's gone because it's improving. And some of the things that even I seen when I first came over, when you went to some of the stadiums and you seen some of the fields, and I think that would make for some great viewing and probably show people what it's like to travel and play in some of these places and all the things that you go through that people don't see. I think someone in the US, maybe Brett that's on from Las Vegas Lights, maybe he can sell that and we can get a behind the scenes documentary with Las Vegas Lights. I actually wouldn't be surprised if that's in the pipeline.
Well, since you did bring up The Last Dance, Neill, is there anything else that maybe some of the other fans can kind of engage in? Like, what have you been watching on Netflix? It doesn't have to be soccer related, but just as something to kind of pass the time besides kids shows.
They won't be probably surprised to know that I miss Scotland at times as much as I love my life in Florida. So I watch this program called Outlander. I think my wife watches it because she likes a man in a kilt. So it's been good, but I realise just how little I watch the television when soccer's not on. I could cancel my TV subscription when the live sport's not on. One of the best things about the break, and you got to look at the positives. I mean, spending time with my kids has been fantastic. Getting to go and do things with them and ride their bikes and all that kind of thing that that you sometimes sacrifice for the time away. So that's been good.
Neill, this is a question that came in from a couple of people, from Sheila and Amy, and also something I was curious about. What are you most proud of from your first 2 years as manager of the Rowdies?
So when I took the job, there's obviously certain people that give you advice. And it was actually someone that gave me, I would say, the best piece of advice that I didn't really know. It was Adrian Heath, the Minnesota coach. And he just said to me, look, Neill, you're going to win games, you're going to lose games. Eventually you might get the sack. But the most important thing is you leave the club in a better place than you got it. And I think now we look back on 2 years and I feel that we have made a lot of things a lot better. I'm not happy with where we're at because I want to make us even better. I want to make us a dominant side in the league. But I do believe around the club, on the field, off the field, we've improved things. And while that's maybe not one particular thing, again, where we're at after 2 years, I'm proud of that. We're getting more players in the community. We're engaging with more young elite players and giving them an opportunity. We've got younger players coming into the team that are actually assets. We're getting bids for players, substantial bids from MLS teams for players that are disrupting my life. But that's what the club should be. That's what the club should be, is because with the drawing power that we've got and the amount of players that I get contacting me want to come and play for this club, that from abroad, we are a big attraction, and we've got to remember that. And we've got to set our standards high because the club the club and the history deserve that. So I think just the all rounds, better footing that we're on, well, with a base to build on now.
All right. I think we do have a couple of real quick questions here.
Yep.
Obviously, you brought up the possibility of either having no season or hopefully we get some form of soccer here in 2020. How do you feel the roster suits up to a potentially shorter time frame, or if they try to stack games in a short amount of time? How do you think the team is built depth-wise and just fitness-wise?
So when this first happened, I obviously addressed the players because we were on the bus to Miami, And I said to them, I think we're suited for whatever came our way. I think we've got guys that can run all day. But that is not to say that when we do find out the format, we will need to make adjustments. We want to be a high pressing team, high energy team. The effort that we ask out our players is a lot. The standards we set in terms of the pace we want to play at is a lot. Can we sustain that playing every 4 or 5 days? You know, we'll definitely try, but we'd be foolish to just do that 100% of the time if the players only get 3 or 4 weeks to prepare for that. You know, we had a 6-7 week pre-season, and we still weren't quite. We were physically, but we weren't maybe technically exactly where we wanted to be. So we're going to have less time to do that. But I think we'll be as well prepared as anyone. You know, I think my answer to that question would be we'll be as well prepared as anyone. Our players will be as well prepared as anyone, because I think we've got good professionals. And then we'll need to adapt. Will there be 5 subs? That's something that we'll need to learn to use, and that will be trial and error at times, because people will take 2 guys out at 45 minutes and put an extra 2 guys in, but that might not be the best, because some guys might not come into their own to the last 60, 70, 80 minutes. So these are all things that we'll need to work through. But as I mentioned earlier, the players' attitude is no excuses. That's one thing that's came from the players. What we get handed, we will make the best of. So that's what I like to hear, and that's what we'll need to do. I've got time if there's a couple more questions, guys. More than happy to answer.
Matt Cox has
yeah, go
one.
ahead.
The other half of the Unused Substitutes, Jake's partner in crime. When you're talking to players that you're interested in signing, what is it about the club that you most pitch to them?
Well, it's not hard to sell our club. But that's been a big thing, actually, that we, myself and Lee, have talked about, and it was a big thing I said, is that we need to start realising that we don't need to sell the club. And I don't mean that doesn't mean that I don't phone players and explain what a great club we are. But what I mean is that we need to recognise that we are a great club, and that means that we can attract good players, and I think players should want to come here. Now, I'm not conceited to think that the best players should just crawl to come to Tampa, you know, because it's Tampa and Tampa Bay, and, you know, they should just want to be here. You know, we need to do, you know, better on the field, of course, at times to warrant these players wanting to come. But I've noticed a distinct change over the last year, and I'm at pains to say they've got to want to come. And if the player wants to come, you know, for the right reasons, because for football reasons, and that's the big thing for me. When you speak to a player, which I always do, and our recruitment process is really pretty long. You know, we watch a lot of the player, we try and do background checks, we've got data to back it up. There's obviously certain things that I'm looking for in their game. And then when I speak to the player, I can get a sense straight away. Is the first thing they ask, is their agent ask about the money? Or is it the player asking where he's going to play and how I see him in the team and what's his role, and, you know, who's he going to play beside? These are the questions that I want a player to ask. So that's a big thing. You know, that chat with a player is always good. And in the best case scenario, I'd be able to meet the player face to face. Unfortunately, we can't. But you know, I think our recruitment's been much better, and it's not easy in the USL because there's a high turnover of players. It's something we're trying to get away from and try and have a bit more continuity. So hopefully we'll see that over the next 2 or 3 years.
Neill, we've got a question from Nikki Long in the chat. Is there a coach from your past that has influenced your coaching style most?
Yeah, you know, again, very fortunate that the coach that signed me to my first full-time contract at 20-year-old, Mike McCarthy. He's a famous coach in the UK. He's managed Ireland at the World Cup. I was fortunate enough to win promotion to the Premier League with him at Sunderland and Wolves, and he had a huge impact on my career. But you speak to anyone that played under him, and it was his honesty and his straightforwardness that players at the time didn't always appreciate. But I think looking back, you know, you realise that it got the best out of you when someone's been straightforward with you. And I think there's a difference between the truth and the brutal truth. You don't always have to give them the brutal truth, but I think just trying to be straight with them. Some players might never get that, but a lot of them will look back and go, well, at least he didn't lead me down the garden path, or didn't try and spare my feelings just for the sake of being a nice guy. Again, at times you've got to disappoint people, and that was one of the hardest things early on. Again, was disappointing guys that I played with, disappointing someone like Georgie Haristov, who was a friend, and is a friend, I'd like to think, but that's the part that I've taken. You've just got to be straight, and you've got to do what's best for the club. Because again, I'm a head coach right now. I'm in charge of what's best for the Rowdies right now, but the club's going to be here long after I'm gone. So I've got to try and make sure I'm doing what's best for the club, and not just trying to make people think I'm a nice guy.
And again, guys, if you have any other quick last Q&As, you can use the Q&A button at the top as well. I know we've gotten to a lot of them.
See, I've got I've noticed one here. I think it's someone that's tuning in from the UK. So David, he's asking if games are played behind closed doors. And I think, again, one of the things that I feel again for the club that we've got and improved on is the safe standing behind the goal. I mean, it looks fantastic. I think it's going to improve the atmosphere even more. I think it's going to give the players something to thrive on. So we all want fans in the stadiums. Anyone that watched the Bundesliga at the weekend will see that that's not what sport is about. But we all have to make adjustments to what's happened. We'd be foolish if we don't. If we have to play behind closed doors to begin with, that's what we're going to have to do, and we're going to have to adapt and not have any excuses about it. But the quicker we're back in front of fans, the better, because that's when we'll really be back. And we'll just need to be patient with that, I guess. But I want for the players' sake to play, but it would be great to play at all with fans. All right. I think one more question. I think that would be put people
All right.
in misery.
Well, Neill, we've seen on the Rowdies social media pages, a couple of people have put their favorite five-a-side for Rowdies all time. We're looking for your five-a-side of just players that you've played with.
As long as no one posts this, because I don't want to offend any of my current. I don't want to offend any of my current players. That I have to say, some of the teams were very good. I looked at them all, and some of them were not so good. I think in my whole time there, coaching and as a player, it's again very difficult. I'm going to try and stick back to my last question and being as honest as I can. I'll go for. Is this for my career or just Rowdies?
You know what? Let's do whole career. That way you can offend less people.
That would save me from offending anyone. All right.
But I'll tell Georgie that you didn't pick him first. That's fine.
Yeah, well, Georgie will say that I never pick him, so that's fine. I would go for. There's a player called Matt Murray, played with in goals, 6'5", built like a wrestler, and when he always used to come out the tunnel last, so we'd all be in the tunnel, and he would come out last, and I used to watch as players would just look up at him as if to say, how are we getting past this guy today? And he actually only played 100 games in his career, and he played 2 full seasons for Wolves, and both those seasons the club achieved the playoffs, and he was voted the best player in the championship. And for a goalkeeper, this guy was phenomenal. So he would be my goalkeeper. I think he would have played for England had it not been for injury. So I'll put him in goals. And defence, and he could play on defence on his own. Harry Maguire, current Manchester United record defender, most expensive defender. I think you'll find him the player that he's played with the most in his career, 150 times. From an 18-year-old, I could tell he was destined for the top. Took longer than I expected, but captain of Manchester United and played in the World Cup semi-final. He will just go from strength to strength, and to top it off, a great guy. So he would be centre back. I'm going to have Joe Cole in my team, particularly for his first 6 months in the Rowdies jersey. That made me realise how good he must have been when he was in his prime, because there was days in training and days in games he did things that were just fantastic. I'm sure the Rowdies have fond memories of some of the goals he scored. Trust me, in 5-a-sides, he could just go by someone as if they weren't there. So yeah, it made me think that playing against Joe in his prime must have been horrendous. So Joe comes into the team. There's a player that's not maybe someone that many people know. Again, another Wolves player, Carol Henry. He would captain the team, and he was one of the best captains I played for. Carol, because he was just a player's captain. Whatever the players wanted, he would go to the manager and ask, and he would train hard, and he was always there when you needed him. So Carol would be in the midfield. And then in terms of strikers, I played with Dwight York, who was one of my boyhood heroes, but he wasn't great when I played with him, so I'm not going to pick Dwight York. I'm going to go for you know what? I'm going to go for Seba Guinzati. Played with Seba, but I think he's shown his true worth for me as a player, and I think still underrated. I think Wanta Hada has been fantastic for the club. Great player. I think he's going to go on to great things. But Seba scored 19 goals last season. 19 goals, and he runs the most in the team. That is a hard combination to find anywhere in the world. So Seba for me is a manager's dream, and making him captain when people say I made some mistakes in my time as coach, making Seba captain is one of the best decisions that I've made. And I think when you look at great Rowdies, I hope Seba gets 100 appearances, and again, hope he gets the recognition he deserves. So that 5-a-side team would be good. So yeah, I'd be happy to coach it.
Well, Neill, just one last question. Just if you had a quick message, a personal message to the fans, Ralph's Mob and Skyway Casuals and all the other supporters of the Rowdies before we do get back to work, what would it be?
I think there's a saying, I hope I get this right, the absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I think that's the case in this situation. The longer that we don't get to play in front of you guys at Owl Lang, it'll just make it better when it comes. We're all missing it. I trust that the fans are missing it as much as me and the players are, and we're going to make up for it when that opportunity comes. And just again, trust that the club are doing everything behind the scenes to try and get things back up and running, but they won't do anything to the detriment of the players' safety or the fans' safety, and they'll be the first people to know when the news is confirmed. So hope to see you all soon, and behind the scenes we're working hard to give you the success you deserve. But thanks for joining us tonight, and hopefully see you soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Neill, and Jake. Thanks for taking an hour out of your Monday night as well. And all of you guys that are on the Zoom call right now, this is the happiest sports day I've had since the coronavirus issue has started. So again, thanks to Jake from the Unused Substitutes and Neill Collins for joining us and letting us just pick your mind and being a great coach and a leader of the Rowdies. And again, thanks to everyone else, and come on, you Rowdies.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, boys. All the best.
Neill.